Hello, traveler. Welcome back. Or maybe you're here for the first time. Either way, I'm so glad you're here. This is Whispers for Sleep, a quiet place where stories drip like mist, and the rain taps gently on the windows of your thoughts. Here, you'll find whispered memories, slow-burning emotions, and just enough poetry to ease your breath and quiet your mind. Tonight's story is called The Coin We Flipped for Forever. It's about a man, a woman, and a coin that strangely never fell the way it was supposed to. It's soft, emotional, and maybe just familiar enough to make you wonder. Have you ever flipped a coin, hoping it would make the hardest choice for you? Or maybe you're still waiting for it to land. Let the rain fall. Let your thoughts slow down. You don't need to do anything but listen, breathe, and let go. Let us begin. Part 1. The Coin Toss. It was raining that morning, the kind of soft, persistent rain that makes everything quieter than it really is. Our apartment windows were streaked with gray, blurring the view of the street below. I remember the scent of her coffee mixing with the earthy smell of wet pavement. She stood by the counter in her robe, both hands wrapped around a chipped navy mug, the one she always reached for when she was thinking too hard. I was half listening to the rain, half watching her, waiting for the moment to speak. But she beat me to it. "Let us flip a coin," she said, almost too casually. I blinked. "A coin?" She nodded slowly, her gaze still fixed on the rain outside. "If it is heads, I stay. If it is tails, I go. Amsterdam. The job. Everything." The silence that followed her words had weight. I could feel it settling between us, thick like fog. We had been circling this conversation for days. Her job offer overseas had come like a perfectly wrapped gift dropped into the middle of our quiet, undecided life. It was everything she had worked for, everything she deserved. And yet, here we were, unable to choose. "You are serious?" I asked, still not sure if she was joking or desperate. She turned toward me, gave a small, tired smile. "Not about fate. Just about making a choice. We cannot keep sitting on this. Maybe we let something else decide for us." I leaned back on the couch, rubbing my thumb along the seam of the cushion. This was not like us. We were the spreadsheet couple. The list makers. We compared brands of olive oil, for God's sake. And now she wanted to hand our future to chance. But then again, maybe chance was all we had left. We had talked circles around the issue, what it would mean if she went, how we would make it work, whether we even wanted the same things anymore. We never reached a clear answer. Only more questions, and longer silences. I stood up, walked toward the little ceramic dish by the entryway, the one where we tossed our keys and spare change. I dug through it until I found a coin that felt just heavy enough. It was a quarter, old and worn, the ridges smooth from years of use. I turned it over in my palm before bringing it back to her. "Here," I said, holding it out. "You flip it?" Her fingers brushed mine as she took the coin. It felt like a moment we should remember, even though it was just metal and skin. She looked down at the quarter for a long second, then back at me. "You ready?" I nodded, though I was not. She flicked her thumb, and the coin flew into the air, spinning fast and silver through the dim morning light. Time stretched. I swear the room went silent, like even the rain paused to see what would happen. It landed with a sharp clink on the hardwood floor. We both leaned in to look. And then we froze. The coin, our fate, our future, our impossible question was not lying flat. It had landed on its edge. Perfectly balanced. Not heads. Not tails. Just standing. I remember blinking slowly, as if the image might change when I opened my eyes again. But it did not. "You have got to be kidding me," I muttered. She stared at it, speechless. Then she knelt down next to me. For a long while, neither of us said a word. We just looked at it, sitting there, defying decision. It was almost poetic, in the worst way. Eventually, I sat back against the couch. She joined me, pulling her knees up to her chest. We watched the coin for what felt like hours. "I guess we are not supposed to know yet," she said softly. I wanted to say something profound, but all I could manage was, "Maybe." And then we just sat there, together, on the edge. Like the coin. Part 2. How we met. I met her on a Tuesday. I remember that, not because anything particularly special happened that day, but because Tuesdays were the days I hated the most. Not far enough from the weekend to feel rested, not close enough to the next one to feel hope. A kind of forgotten day, dull and in between. But that one changed something. It was late afternoon. I had ducked into the college bookstore because it had started raining again and I did not feel like heading back to the dorm just yet. I was wandering near the back, aimlessly flipping through overpriced paperbacks I would never buy, when I heard someone humming. Soft, low, like she was doing it without even realizing. The kind of sound that slips under your skin before you notice it. She was in the poetry section, leaning in slightly to read a worn copy of Mary Oliver. Her hair was pulled up into a loose knot, strands falling in quiet rebellion. She was wearing a mustard-colored sweater, sleeves pushed up to her elbows. There was something deeply unhurried about her, like the rest of the world could spin as fast as it wanted and she would just stay right there, unmoved. I almost walked away. But I did not. I pretended to be interested in a shelf nearby, pulling out some collection of essays I would later forget. She glanced up, noticed me, and gave a small smile. The kind of smile that was more acknowledgement than invitation. Still, it landed. "What are you humming?" I asked. She blinked. Was I? I nodded. She thought for a second, then laughed softly. Probably Joni Mitchell. My brain does that sometimes. plays songs on a loop. It was a strange first sentence to begin a story with, but I liked it. It made her real. We started talking, right there between Yeats and Neruda. I told her I was a philosophy major who never actually read the books I was supposed to. She told me she was majoring in literature but secretly liked crime novels more than the classics. We joked about professors we both found unbearable, about campus coffee that tasted like burnt rubber, about how none of us really knew what we were doing with our lives. She said her name, and I repeated it out loud, just to feel how it sounded. There was a kind of quiet magic in that corner of the bookstore. No dramatic music. No slow-motion glances. Just two people standing near shelves, talking too long about things that probably did not matter. And yet, somehow, everything shifted. She had to leave first. She had a class. But before she left, she turned back to me. "You should read more poetry," she said. "Even if it is just to impress strangers in bookstores." I grinned. "Are you impressed?" She shrugged. "A little." And then she was gone. But something lingered. Maybe the scent of her sweater, maybe the echo of her laugh. Maybe just the possibility. That night, I went back and actually read the Mary Oliver poem she had been holding. It was about ordinary beauty. About loving the quiet moments. I read it 3 times before bed, and something inside me softened. The next week, I went back to that bookstore every day around the same time. I did not admit I was hoping to see her. Not even to myself. But I always checked the poetry aisle first. And on Friday, there she was. This time, she saw me first. And she smiled. "Let me guess," she said, "you are here for another lecture on Joni Mitchell." I laughed. "Actually, I was hoping you might recommend a poem." And that was it. That was how it began. No fireworks. No big romantic gesture. Just a mustard sweater, a rainstorm, and a bookstore on a Tuesday. Sometimes, I wonder if everything we became started right there in that aisle, or if we had been circling each other in small invisible ways before that moment. If maybe life had lined things up, just enough, for that strange, quiet Tuesday to carry a little bit more weight than the others. Looking back, I think that is what love often is. Not the grand, sweeping story they write songs about. But a Tuesday afternoon. A hum. A stranger who feels familiar. And a smile you want to chase into every tomorrow. Part 3. The summer we shared. The summer came early that year. Not in temperature, but in feeling. It was still spring technically, but something about the way the air settled on our skin, the way the sun lingered just a little longer each day, made it feel like we were already there. And maybe we were. We were not officially anything yet. Not boyfriend and girlfriend. Not partners. Not even sure if we were headed in the same direction. But we started to spend every afternoon together like it was something written in the rules. Our favorite place was the small wooden porch outside her rented house. It creaked under every step, and the paint was peeling near the edges, but we loved it. She had 2 mismatched chairs and a small table she had rescued from a thrift store. We would sit there for hours, sipping cheap iced tea and reading aloud to each other. Sometimes poetry. Sometimes stories. Once, the instruction manual for a broken fan she had been trying to fix for weeks. Those were the kinds of days that slipped by like a gentle river. Nothing urgent. Nothing loud. Just the 2 of us speaking in soft tones, letting the words hang between us like smoke. There were walks, too. Endless, meandering walks through quiet neighborhoods and along shaded trails. She would always stop to take pictures of things no one else noticed: rust on a fence, a lost glove hanging from a branch, the way light pooled in a puddle. I teased her once, said she had the eyes of a poet and the patience of a saint. She just smiled and handed me a dandelion. "Make a wish," she said. I did. I did not tell her what it was. Some nights, we would lie on the floor in her living room, listening to records that crackled like campfire wood. She liked music from before we were born. Carole King, Simon and Garfunkel, Nina Simone. Songs that felt like they remembered something even when we did not. She would sing along quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. I always listened like it was the only thing that mattered. Once, I asked her why she liked the sad songs the most. "They make space for something real," she said. "Not everything has to be happy to be beautiful." I remember that. I remember it because it felt like something I would carry forever. There were days when it rained, and we would stay inside and make pancakes just to fill the room with warmth. Once we added cinnamon and nutmeg and pretended we were opening a cafe. She wrote down fake menu items in a notebook, things like rainy day special and waffles with regret. We laughed until we cried. And then we cried until we laughed again. That was the rhythm of it. This summer of almosts. We were close, so close, to calling it love, but we never quite said it out loud. Maybe we were afraid we would break the spell. Maybe we believed that naming things made them heavier. Or maybe we just thought we had time. We kissed, of course. The first time was on that porch, just as the sky turned pink. It was not planned. It did not feel like a movie. It felt quiet. It felt right. Like 2 puzzle pieces finally leaning into each other. Afterward, we did not talk about it. We just held hands and watched the sun disappear. I think about that a lot now, the way we let that summer unfold like pages in a well-worn book. No rush to the ending. No need to know what chapter came next. Just the comfort of turning one page at a time, together. There was a small journal she kept, filled with single sentences from each day. June 2nd, he made me laugh so hard, I dropped my tea. June 9th, we watched ants carry crumbs across the porch and talked about mortality. June 21st, I think I am falling. I found it months later, long after everything changed. She had left it tucked inside a book of Rilke poems, as if she wanted me to find it, but not too soon. Reading it felt like walking back into sunlight after a long winter. That summer ours was not perfect. We still argued about silly things. Still had moments when we did not understand each other. But there was a softness to the disagreements, a kind of care stitched into the edges. We were both learning how to be seen. And how to stay. We never made any promises. Never said, "This is forever." But there were mornings I woke up with her hair brushing against my arm, and I thought, if this is not forever, I do not know what is. Time moved like honey then. Thick. Golden. Slow. And every drop tasted like maybe. Part 4. Plans and Panic. The envelope sat on our kitchen table for 3 days. Cream-colored, thick, and heavy like it was holding more than just paper. She had not opened it right away, even though the return address in the corner said Paris. That alone should have told me what was inside. But we both pretended it was just another letter, something ordinary. She went about her days as usual, brewing coffee, folding laundry, humming along to her French records. I noticed she was quieter than usual, but I said nothing. Maybe I was hoping that silence could keep change away, like a locked door with no key. On the third evening, I came home to find her standing by the window, envelope torn open, letter in hand. She did not turn around when she spoke. "They offered me the job." Her voice was soft. Not excited. Not unsure. Just quiet. I nodded slowly, even though she could not see me. That's amazing." "It is," she said. "It's everything I thought I wanted. A teaching fellowship in Paris. 1 year. Possibly more. Art history, lectures, museums, quiet cafes. Her dream. One we used to talk about in the early days, lying on the floor with our heads pressed close and our fingers drawing imaginary maps across the ceiling. But the thing about dreams is they never tell you what they'll take with them when they come true. We sat on the couch that night, knees touching but eyes drifting. "What do we do?" she asked. "I don't know," I said. "What do you want to do?" "I want to go," she said slowly. "But I want to stay, too." The way she looked at me when she said that, it hurt more than if she had just chosen one. "I want you," she added. "And I want Paris. But I don't know how to make those things live in the same life." I tried to smile, but it felt crooked. Maybe they can't. We stayed up late that night, speaking less and less as the hours stretched on. We were not fighting. We were not even disagreeing. But something had started shifting. Not broken, just tilting. I found myself Googling things like long-distance relationship statistics and how to know if you should follow someone across the world. She started looking at apartments in the Latin Quarter and bookmarking maps of bus routes and bakeries. We were living in the same space, but preparing for two different futures. One night, as we ate leftovers in silence, she put her fork down and looked at me carefully. "What if we flipped a coin?" I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. "For what?" To decide, she said. Heads, I stay. Tails, I go. You can't be serious. I don't know if I am, she admitted. But maybe I am. We're both afraid to choose, right? Maybe this way. Something else chooses for us. I shook my head. You really want to leave our future up to chance? She shrugged. I just want the weight of the choice to stop crushing me. Later that night, she pulled a coin from the old jar on the bookshelf. A tarnished quarter with worn edges. We don't have to do it, she whispered. I nodded. Okay. But I knew we would. We put it on the table between us like a tiny, sleeping god. It shimmered under the light, innocent and terrifying. That night, in bed, I watched her sleep like I always did when I was unsure of the world. Her hair spilled over the pillow like waves I could drown in. I whispered into the dark, what if the coin never lands? There was no answer. But I could still feel the question hanging in the room like fog. Part 5, the day before she left. Word count, 1060 real line breaks, 47. The day before she left, the sky forgot how to make up its mind. One moment it was sunny, the next, gray, and trembling with the threat of rain. We stayed mostly indoors, not because we had to, but because going out made things feel too final. I made breakfast while she packed. Not that there was much to pack, she had already shipped most of her things the week before. Still, she went through her closet again and again, like some hidden item might change her decision. She came out holding a shirt I never liked, too oversized, too orange, and asked, should I take this? I smirked. Only if you want to make the Parisians go blind. She laughed. God, that laugh. Not loud, not forced. Just pure and small and hers. We spent the day pretending it was not the day before goodbye. We watched reruns of cooking shows, took turns burning grilled cheese, and played a word game we used to love, one where you had to name places you wanted to visit, but only with letters from each other's names. Her Iceland beat my Detroit, and I let it. At some point, I looked up and realized she was staring at me, eyes soft and unsure. What? I asked. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Nothing. Just memorizing you. That was when it hit me, the kind of ache that settles into your bones, not sharp like a wound, but slow like a season changing. Later that evening, we opened a bottle of red wine we had been saving for something we never quite defined. We sat cross-legged on the floor, the bottle between us like an hourglass counting down. You remember that coin? She asked suddenly. I nodded. Of course I remembered. She reached into her bag and pulled it out. It looked the same as before, old, worn, forgettable. Still want to flip it? She asked. I hesitated. Then I said, only if we agree not to blame it. Deal, she whispered. She flipped it. Not high, not fancy, just a simple spin from her fingers. We both watched it tumble through the air, spinning, glinting, uncertain. And then it landed on its edge. Perfectly balanced between heads and tails, between stay and go. For a moment, neither of us moved. It felt like the world had paused, like even time was waiting to see what we would do next. "That's impossible," I murmured. She leaned closer, face inches from mine. "Maybe the universe is as indecisive as we are." I wanted to laugh. I wanted to cry. I did neither. We left the coin where it was. We did not touch it, did not try again. That one toss said everything. Later, in bed, we lay tangled up in silence. Not the cold kind, this was the warm silence of people holding on to every second. She pressed her face against my shoulder and whispered, "You'll be okay." I wanted to lie. I wanted to tell her yes, of course. But instead, I said, "Will you?" She kissed my collarbone instead of answering. Outside, the rain finally came. Not hard, just steady. Like something letting go. In the middle of the night, I woke up and reached for her. She was still there. For now. And the coin still stood, waiting. Part 6. Neither here nor there. The morning after the coin landed on its edge, she packed her bags and left. There was no grand farewell, no shouting matches, just a quiet suitcase and a soft kiss on my cheek before she slipped out of my life. She did not vanish completely, not like a storm that sweeps everything away, more like the slow fading of twilight. We promised to keep in touch, of course. It was not a breakup, at least not in the way people imagine. Instead, our days filled with phone calls that lasted longer than expected, texts that were sometimes full of emojis, sometimes awkward and half-finished. She sent me photos of rainy streets in Paris, croissants fresh from the oven, and little bookstores filled with dusty pages and whispered stories. I sent her pictures to my cluttered desk, the empty coffee cup I forgot to throw away, the park bench where I used to sit and think about her. But despite the contact, something shifted. We were caught in a strange place, neither together nor truly apart. I stayed in the city where we had made all those memories, surrounded by reminders of what we once shared. She was far away, chasing a dream we had whispered about in those long, late-night talks. Some nights, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if she felt the same ache inside her chest, if she missed me as much as I missed her. Other nights, I convinced myself that this in-between was enough. Love could survive on calls, letters, and promises half kept, right? But other nights, the silence between us stretched too wide, a chasm impossible to cross. I kept thinking about that coin balanced on its edge, wondering if it had fallen when she left, or if it was still hanging there, refusing to decide, just like our feelings. "Do you think it will ever fall?" I asked her once during a call, voice barely above a whisper. She hesitated before answering, "Maybe it already has. We just are afraid to admit it." The truth was, I was scared to face the future, scared to lose what we had, scared to let go. But life does not wait for coins to decide for us. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. I kept living, moving forward, but carrying a piece of her with me in the scent of rain, in the glow of streetlights, in the quiet moments when the world felt still. Though she was gone, she was never really gone. Not entirely. Because some things, like that coin, do not fit neatly into yes or no. They linger somewhere in between, waiting for us to make a choice. And maybe, just maybe, that is where love lives, not in certainty, but in the quiet uncertainty that holds us close. Part 7. Letters and late nights. There was something about holding a letter in your hands that a text message could never replace. The feel of the paper, the weight of the words, the scent that somehow clung to the edges, it all made the distance between us feel a little smaller. She wrote to me often, her letters arriving like tiny pieces of her world carefully folded into envelopes. I would wait until the street lamps flickered on, casting long shadows on the pavement, before I pulled one out from the pile on my kitchen table. Reading her words under that soft, yellow light became a ritual, a quiet way to bridge the miles. She wrote about Parisian cafes where the rain tapped gently on the windows, where she would sip her coffee and watch strangers pass by with umbrellas blooming like flowers. She described old films she had discovered, black and white stories of love and loss that made her think of us. I could almost hear her voice, soft and thoughtful, as if she was telling me these stories in person. She mentioned the small things she missed, the way my socks were always left on the floor, the creak of the old wooden stairs in our apartment, the way the light hit the curtains in the morning. Her words painted a picture of a life that was far away but still somehow connected to mine. On some nights, I wrote back, my handwriting awkward and uncertain, struggling to capture the weight of what I felt. Other nights, I just sat with her letters spread out before me, tracing the loops of her handwriting, memorizing the curves of the ink. The silence of my apartment was filled with her presence in those moments. I missed her, but I was also grateful. Grateful that even though we were apart, we had found a way to keep our story alive. I wondered if she held my letters the same way I held hers, carefully, with a mixture of hope and sadness. Our words became a lifeline, a way to say I am here without needing to be there. Sometimes, I thought the letters were more honest than any conversation we had ever had. Because in the quiet of the night, with only paper and pen, the truth could finally breathe. But even with the letters, the ache of absence was always there, a soft, persistent reminder that nothing could replace the touch of a hand or the warmth of a smile. Still, those late nights, reading her words under the glow of the street lamp, I felt close to her again. And for a little while, that was enough. Part 8. New cities, old feelings. When I moved to Boston, I told myself it was for the job. The truth was I needed something to shift. The apartment we had once shared was too quiet, too full of memories that refused to leave. So I packed my books, some clothes, and the record player she bought me one Christmas, and I drove north. The new apartment had large windows and brick walls. It looked like the kind of place someone with a future would live in. But every corner echoed with a familiar silence. The city was louder, faster. It never gave you a chance to catch your breath. I made new friends through work. We went out for beers, joked about office politics, talked about the best spots for takeout. They were kind, easy to be around. And I dated. Not a lot, but enough to feel like I was trying. There was Sarah, who was sharp and funny, always 2 steps ahead in conversation. And Lily, who loved old jazz records and had a laugh that made strangers turn their heads. But something was always missing. With each of them, I would find myself comparing gestures, glances, little habits, the way one stirred her tea, the way another tucked her hair behind her ear. None of it matched what I remembered. I never said her name, but she hovered there, quiet and constant, like the outline of someone who had just stepped out of the room. Sometimes, I would walk through the park near my place and see couples on benches, sharing headphones, or reading aloud to each other. And suddenly I was back on that porch with her, listening to poetry as the summer sun faded behind the trees. I tried to distract myself with new routines. Morning runs along the river. Evening walks to the corner cafe that smelled like cinnamon and burnt coffee. I started writing more, filling notebooks with fragments, thoughts, dreams, half conversations I wished we had. One night, I pulled out a letter she had written months earlier. She had mentioned a bookstore in the Latin Quarter, with creaky floors and a cat that slept by the window. She said it reminded her of the shop where we first met. I smiled, even though my chest tightened. Her life was moving forward too. She sent postcards with crooked handwriting and photos of cobblestone streets. She looked happy in them, a little tired, maybe, but still glowing with that quiet fire she always had. I wondered if she ever walked through a city street and saw someone who reminded her of me. If a song ever came on in a cafe and made her pause, just for a second. If she ever missed me the way I missed her, not in a loud or desperate way, but in the quiet between things. Boston never quite felt like home. It was a place I lived, not a place I belonged. And maybe that was because home, for me, had always been less about walls and more about a person. And that person was still out there. Somewhere between letters and late nights, dreams, and old bookstores. Part 9. The night she visited. It was a Friday in late October when she texted me out of nowhere. Just a simple message. Hey. I'm in town this weekend. Would love to see you. I stared at it for a while. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. For a second, I thought I might not reply. Not because I did not want to, I wanted to, more than anything, but because I was afraid. Afraid of what seeing her would stir up again. Afraid it might undo the fragile balance I had built in her absence. But then I typed, of course. When and where? We met the next morning at a quiet cafe on Charles Street. She was already sitting outside, wrapped in a scarf, holding a steaming cup of something that smelled like cinnamon. Her hair was shorter, and there were small lines near her eyes, like tiny imprints of laughter and time. But she still smiled the same way, that slow, warm curve that always undid me. I sat down, suddenly aware of how much I had missed the sound of her voice. We talked like no time had passed. She asked about my job, my apartment, the book I had told her I was writing 2 years ago and had not finished. I asked about Paris, her students, the bookstore cat she had written about once. We sipped coffee and laughed about the way we used to burn pancakes every Sunday morning. Everything felt easy. Too easy, maybe. Like we were pretending nothing had changed. But everything had. She told me she was only in town for a few days, a conference, a few meetings, and then back across the ocean. I nodded like it was nothing. Like it had not made something inside me ache. After the cafe, we walked through the park. The trees were turning gold and red, and she kept stopping to point out ones that looked like they were on fire. It reminded me of that summer, the porch, the poetry, the way she used to look at the world like it was constantly trying to show her something beautiful. That night, she came over to my place. We made dinner together, pasta and garlic bread, and played the old records we used to love. The apartment smelled like basil and nostalgia. We sat on the floor, wine glasses in hand, backs against the couch. The conversation softened into quiet, the kind of quiet that hums with things unsaid. She picked up a book from my shelf, a collection of Neruda poems, and opened it to a random page. Without asking, she started reading aloud. Her voice was slower now, heavier in places, like the words meant something new. I watched her lips form each sentence. I memorized the sound of her breath between lines. And for a moment, it felt like nothing had ever broken. Like the coin had never been tossed. Like we were still whole. But I knew better. I knew this was a borrowed evening. A soft, temporary moment suspended in time. She stayed late, but not overnight. At the door, she hugged me longer than usual. Her cheek rested against mine for just a second longer than it had to. I wanted to ask her to stay. But I did not. And she did not offer. We said goodbye like two people pretending it was not really goodbye. Because pretending was easier than admitting we were still on opposite sides of the coin. Part 10, The Talk They Avoided. The smell of syrup filled the diner. It was the same place we always used to go before I walked her to the train. Same squeaky booth, same overcooked coffee. But the weight between us had changed. She was wearing my old hoodie, the navy one with the frayed cuffs. It looked too small on her now, or maybe I was just seeing it with years in between. We ordered pancakes without asking each other, like muscle memory. She added too much syrup, like always. I tried to smile, but it got stuck somewhere behind my teeth. I forgot how cold Boston mornings are, she said, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. She was not talking about the weather. I thought you liked the cold, I said. She shrugged. I used to like a lot of things. There was a pause. Not heavy, just slow. Like the air around us was waiting for us to finally speak the truth. So, she said, not meeting my eyes, are we going to talk about it? I felt my stomach tighten. I wanted to pretend I did not know what it was. But I did. We can, I said. I think we should. She nodded, resting her chin on her hand. I feel like we have been walking around the same question for years. What question? I asked, already knowing the answer. Are we still us? I looked at the pancakes between us. They were starting to soak through the plate. I do not know anymore, I said. But I never really felt like we stopped. She looked at me then. Really looked. I think I kept you in a box labeled maybe, she said softly. And that box followed me to every city. I let out a breath. I think I did the same. I just never unpacked it. We laughed quietly. The sound surprised us both. It was not bitter. Just tired. I thought time would solve it, she said. But time just made me better at avoiding it. I nodded. I thought the coin would decide. I hate that coin, she whispered. I know, I said. Me too. Another train passed behind the diner. It rattled the sugar shakers on the table. She reached across the table, fingers brushing mine. I never stopped loving you, she said, not blinking. My throat tightened. I never did either. But we are not the same people anymore, she added. No. We are not, I agreed. But maybe we are better. She pulled her hand back, held her coffee with both palms. I do not want to keep drifting like this. Then let us stop, I said. Let us talk. Really talk. About what this is now. She gave me a small smile. Okay, she said. Okay, I replied. We left the diner without finishing the pancakes. But for once, I did not feel like something was left undone. Part 11. The edge begins to tilt. It started with a phone call. She had been offered tenure. That dream job, the one that once made her eyes glow like they held entire constellations. Her voice trembled through the speaker, not with excitement, but uncertainty. I do not know if I want it, she said. I stood by the window, watching late October light fold itself across the sidewalk. But it is what you worked for. I know. That is the strange part. Outside, trees let go of their leaves slowly, the way people let go of plans they once thought were forever. That evening, I walked to the hospital to visit my father. He was thinner now, quieter. Machines beeped gently near his bed, sounding almost like lullabies for the fading. He opened his eyes just as I was adjusting the chair beside him. You still waiting on her? He asked. I blinked. I am not sure I ever stop. Then do not wait too long. Life is not polite about timing. He closed his eyes again, like that cost him every ounce of strength. Later that night, she called again. I keep picturing our apartment, she said. What color are the walls now? She laughed. Still that awful beige, I guess. But now we have art. A messy coffee table. Too many mugs. I smiled into the silence. You think we would have made it work? She was quiet. Then, I think we still could. That stayed with me. The idea that something unfinished did not mean something failed. It just meant something paused. The week moved slowly. My father's condition worsened, and the air began to smell like winter. She had 1 week to respond to the university. I had no decisions to make, yet everything inside me felt like a decision waiting to happen. One morning, I opened my coat closet and found his old jacket. Inside the pocket was the coin. That coin. The one that had once landed on its edge. The one that refused to choose. I held it between my fingers, warm now from my palm, and I stared at it like it owed me something. But it stayed still. Unmoving. Just like us. I wanted her to stay. I wanted to say that. But there were too many lives leaning on what we did not say. And hers was just starting to bloom. Still, I wanted her beside me. Not just through letters or evening calls or memory-colored dreams. That week, everything tilted. Not fast. Not loud. But undeniably. Part 12. The almost goodbye. The airport was too bright. It always is. Fluorescent lights, rushing shoes, rolling luggage, announcements in languages you half understand. It is not a place for clear thoughts. Still, we stood there, holding paper coffee cups that had gone cold long before we realized we had stopped drinking. "I hate this place," she whispered. "Yeah," I said. "Me too." Her scarf smelled like lavender. Or maybe that was just how memory dressed her. She had her ticket in one hand, the strap of her shoulder bag digging into her coat. Her eyes kept scanning the crowd like she was afraid someone might see us and turn this all too real. "I keep thinking," she said, "that if we just get through this one goodbye, maybe we do not have to keep repeating it." I nodded, but I could not say yes. Not honestly. Because part of me already knew this was not the last time we would find ourselves here. Airports had become our in-between places, the bookmarks in a story that refused to finish itself. Her flight was delayed, and so we sat. Not close enough to touch, not far enough to not feel it. "I had a dream about us," she said suddenly. "You were cooking. Wearing that terrible apron with the cartoon eggs. You bought that." "I know. I hated it." She laughed, and then she almost cried. Almost. But she breathed in and blinked it away. That had become her specialty. The overhead screen changed. Final boarding call. Time, again, had run out like water through our hands. She stood. I stood. And still, neither of us said what we wanted. No dramatic declarations. No stay or come with me or let us run away from all of this. Just that quiet, shattering look people share when they know something is ending but refuse to admit it. Her arms wrapped around me, tight but not desperate. Like we were both pretending this was just temporary. Like we would meet again next weekend. Like love was easy. I almost said, "Come back for good." I really did. It hovered right behind my teeth, pushing, begging. But I bit it back, afraid of what it would cost her. afraid of what it would cost me if she said no. She almost said, "I will stay." I know she did. I saw it in her shoulders, the way they lifted like breath right before a sentence. But she dropped it. Like change, like coins. Instead, she smiled soft, resigned. "I will write," she said. "I know." She walked away. And I watched her go. Because that is what I always did. And I always wondered if one day, she would turn back. She never did. Part 13. The coin falls. It had been months since I last thought about the coin. Maybe even a year. But that night, I found it again tucked deep inside the pocket of my old navy coat, the one I had not worn since she left. It was late. One of those quiet nights where the city felt gentler, somehow. The kind of night where you could hear your own thoughts and not be scared of them. I had been walking aimlessly, no real destination. Just trying to clear my head after another phone call with my mom. Dad's condition had not improved. He still forgot the date, still asked where I was living now. He still remembered her name, though. That part always hit me the hardest. I came home, shrugged off my coat, and something hard clinked as it hit the floor. There it was. The coin. I sat down on the edge of the couch, holding it between my fingers. Smooth and familiar. Heads on one side, tails on the other. And that edge, that impossible, ridiculous edge, still marked faintly from where it had landed that day. I stared at it for a long while. Not because I expected it to answer anything. Not because I believed in signs. But because I missed her. I missed the version of me that existed when she was around. The coin felt heavier than it should have. So I flipped it. No ceremony. No build-up. Just a flick of the thumb, like any other coin toss on any other day. It went up, spinning, dancing in the air like it had been waiting all this time. Then it landed. Heads. I blinked. Laughed, almost bitterly. What did it even mean now? She was still across the ocean. I was still here. We were still suspended somewhere between beginning and ending. But something about that simple result has felt like gravity settling in again. I picked it up and placed it on the windowsill. Let it catch the glow from the street lights outside. A reminder that, maybe, I had always known the answer. Maybe we had both been too scared to say it. I walked over to the bookshelf, pulled out the copy of Letters to a Young Poet she had once underlined with red pencil. The pages still smelled like her ink and soft perfume and memory. I opened my laptop, stared at a blank email. Then I wrote, "Hey, do you remember what we said about fate? I think I finally get it. Let's talk soon." I hit send before I could overthink it. Then I leaned back, listened to the soft hum of the radiator, and let myself drift. Not asleep. Not fully awake. But somewhere in between. Like the coin. Like us. Part 14, back to the bookstore. It did not happen the way movies say it should. No sudden hug at the gate. No running into each other on a rainy street. It was an email. Short. Almost quiet. She wrote, "How about coffee next week? The place near the old bookstore still smells like paper and vanilla." That was all. And that was enough. I read it 3 times, then just sat there. The bookstore. I had not been back since the day she found that old Rilke paperback. The one with her notes in the margins. The one I still kept, wrapped in a paper bag under my bed. Saturday came slow. I got up early. I was nervous more than I wanted to admit. I wore the scarf she once gave me. The blue one with the tiny rip in the corner. I even found the coin, still in the coat pocket where it had stayed all this time. I held it a moment, felt the edge, then left it there. The bookstore looked smaller now. Funny how places shrink when memories are bigger than the rooms. The same wooden floors, though. Same smell of coffee drifting from the corner cafe. And then there she was. Not dressed up. Just her. Hair tied back the way she always did when she meant to read for hours. She smiled when she saw me. Like time had not passed, even though we both knew it had. She said, "About time." And I smiled back. We ordered 2 lattes, no sugar. Like always. She still stirred hers even though she never added anything. We sat by the window. Talked. Not about the years we lost. Not yet. We spoke of the cat she adopted in Paris. How it always knocked over the house plants. She told me she had started writing again. Essays, mostly. Things about small details like how different cities smell after rain. I told her I moved once, then moved back. Tried a new job. Learned to cook. She laughed when I said I finally made something edible. And just like that, it was easy again. Not perfect. Not the same. But easy. She asked, "Did you keep the coin?" I nodded and reached into my coat pocket. Placed it on the table. She looked at it, but did not touch it. "I used to think we needed that coin to decide," I said. She leaned in, softly. "Maybe we just needed time." I wanted to reach across the table. Not to hold her hand. Just to feel the space between us shrink. But I waited. Outside, the sun was lower now. Casting warm shapes across the pages of the books on the shelf. She stood and said, "Walk with me." So we walked. Past the coffee shop, through the old park, where someone was playing soft jazz from a bench radio. And the wind carried it like something remembered. We did not say much. But it felt like more than enough. And for the first time in a long time, I was not waiting for the coin to fall. Part 15. Forever begins on a tilt. We did not say fate decided for us. No coin toss, no signs from the universe. It was simpler than that. We stayed because we wanted to, because the silence between us was no longer filled with questions but with understanding. I remember that night clearly. We sat in the dim light of my apartment, the one we once shared, but now felt new again. No need to unpack the past. We just sat, listening to the quiet hum of the city outside and the slow tick of the clock. She looked at me and smiled softly, the kind of smile that says everything words cannot. I think we were never meant to have a clear yes or no, she said. Maybe forever is just learning to balance on the edge. I nodded. It felt like the coin finally settled not on heads or tails, but on something else. Something we made ourselves. The days that followed were gentle. No grand promises or rushed plans. Just slow mornings with coffee, the occasional walk in the park, and evenings spent reading or watching old films. We were not rushing, not pretending everything was perfect, but simply being. Sometimes, I catch myself looking at the coin on my desk. The one that started it all. It reminds me that life is not always about clear choices or perfect endings. Sometimes, it is about the moments in between, the balance we find when nothing seems certain. Dear listener, have you ever felt caught on the edge like that between holding on and letting go? It is not always easy, but maybe, just maybe, it is where we find something real. As you listen to this story tonight, let yourself relax into that space. The uncertainty, the quiet waiting, it is okay. Like the coin balanced just so, your mind can find its own calm in the in-between. Thank you for being here, my friend. For sharing this quiet moment. If you enjoyed this story, please do subscribe and stay for more whispers to help you drift peacefully to sleep. Good night, and may your dreams find their own gentle balance.